Chapter 4 is the longest chapter in the Leopard. It is entitled Love at Donna Fugata, the summer estate of the family. It has two discrete sections. The first concerns the love affair between Tancredi and his affianced Angelica. Its main action appears to be when the two of them go exploring around the mansion at Donna Fugata, and they touch. The second section involves a visit from the representative of the New Order, Victor Emmanuel's messenger, asking Don Fabrizio to serve in the Senate of the New Order. Fabrizio declines, in part out of duty and in part because he thinks the New Order will not achieve its goals. We do well to think about how these two sections fit together under the rubric Love at Donna Fugata. The first part is where Tancredi and Angelica roam around the house, and it allows the readers to see glimpses of the family's past and to compare the character of Tancredi and Angelica to what we see in the paintings and in the rooms. The comparison is not in their favor, it seems, though it is also clear that Tancredi and Angelica are much more restrained than people would be today. They seem to stand as transition figures. Much more is going on in the first section, of course. The chapter begins with an account of how Don Fabrizio and Don Calagaro, the mayor, are getting along. They come to appreciate what the other stands for. Fabrizio sees Calagaro as uncouth, unmannerly, cunning, but also a man of, quote, rare intelligence, end quote, who allows his mind to roam free, as he is of honesty, decency, and plain good manners. He can move through the jungle of life with the confidence of an elephant, which advances in a straight line, rooting up trees and tramping down layers without even noticing scratches of thorns and moans from the crushed, end quote. Calagaro sees Fabrizio not as an oppressor, but as someone who looked down at commerce with a kind of contemptuous indifference about matters he considered low. Fabrizio is really pliable, incapable of self-defense, kind of like a sheep noble, but with an energy and tendency toward abstraction that allowed him to shape life independent of the world around him. Fabrizio was independent in spirit. Lampedusa marvels at men like Calagaro, who, he seems to think, go from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations, as we Americans used to say. From innocent peasants into defenseless gentry in 3 generations, is how Lampedusa puts it. After this introduction, Lampedusa turns to love matters. Tancredi has brought one of his colleagues from the military to see if Conchita, the eldest Fabrizio girl, and the one on whom Tancredi seemed to be focusing his affections earlier, would be a suitable bride. Conchita is deaf to Calagare's advances. Conchita is admired, no doubt, but Calagara sees her as too pure and too beautiful for him. He recognized that Conchita does not love him. Tancredi agrees, and worries that Conchita will never have children or find love in this new dispensation. She is, quote, a little too reserved, too withdrawn, end quote, for that, though she is the sweetest of creatures. The fortunes of a declining family will be ineffective bait for a suitor, and so it happens. In this chapter, it seems, we see the death of the family. The younger sisters are waiting their turn, and the eldest will not take hers. Meanwhile, we have the Tancredi-Angelica love match. These are the happiest, most sensuous days of their lives, days of promise, days where the future looks amazing, days where love, not consummated, seems to hold the key to happiness. Lampedusa artfully draws this picture for us. He begins this section with a treatment of how Angelica is not really capable of love, that she and her class calculate about everything, including love and love matches. They are concerned with advantage. Quote, she had too much pride and too much ambition to be capable of that annihilation, however temporary, of one's personality, without which there is no love." End quote. She did not care then about Tancredi's political future. She was a woman of youthful simplicity. She thought Tancredi a good match. Later she would become, quote, "one of the most venomous string pullers for Parliament and the Senate," end quote. And she would provide her beauty and her body for advancing causes to which she attracted. All of this vice is in the future, though. Lampedusa lets us see it, so that it affects our judgment about what follows. Because the wandering through the castle provides a chance to glimpse the past and to evaluate the couple against the backdrop of the old rooms, we should look at it carefully. First, none of the old relatives portrayed in these rooms would be roaming through these rooms unaccompanied with their affianced. There were bedrooms throughout, and the couple managed to ditch their escorts when there were escorts escorting. They felt sensual agitation and sensual cyclones of sexual anticipation. They imagined what it would be like. Eros drew them in. They touched hands and thought about other ways that they might touch. Quote, "They were moments ecstatic and painful, during which desire became torment, restraints upon it, delight." End quote. Something forbidden nourished their imagination. They risked, and they delighted in it. Yet, as I say, the ancestors would not have acted such. They pass whips as they walk around the castle, used for self-renunciation. There are crucifixes. There are portraits of distant relatives who scourge themselves, so intent were they on denying the primacy of worldly pleasures. There is an asceticism here, a discipline, a denial of the world's pleasures and the pleasures of the body being the highest pleasures. This was a universe of extinct vices and forgotten virtues, Lampedusa writes. These relatives would not, like Don Fabrizio in Chapter 1, visit a prostitute. We see the decline in the family. These old relatives were pious, world-denying, using their place to promote the life of faith. Then we see Don Fabrizio, who practices the forms of faith, but falls away intently. Then we see Tancredi, no faithful man he, and no lover of propriety, as we see in this chapter, but still a practicer of morality. He doesn't bed Angelica in these sojourns. He is a man with some breaks, though some question whether he has breaks. Perhaps Tancredi's children will not have even his breaks. They may be breakless. The journey through the past allows us to see the future. The decline of morality from restraints justified in a cosmic order to one where such restraints would hardly be welcomed or healthy. After this portion of the chapter, we get the second, more political section, where Schiavelli, Secretary of the Prefecture, asks Don Fabrizio to join the new Senate. Don Fabrizio refuses. The beginning of this section is just precious, where Schiavelli is introduced to the terror and crimes typical of Sicily. Tancredi and his friend relish telling stories to this man of assassination, kidnapping, priests being poisoned by Eucharistic wine. The inept police of the Bourbons, Schiavelli wonders, how he and the other more civilized Italians will put an end to it. Anyway, this serves as the perfect introduction for Schiavelli's proposal to Don Fabrizio, who had, after all, had such an enlightened attitude during the movement toward modern Italy. Would he become a senator? Don has his reasons for refusing. The first reason is a matter of pride and decency. Too many things have been done without our being consulted for you to be able to ask a member of the old governing class to help develop things and carry them through, Don Fabrizio says. No man of honor would accept this position in the new order, as it was so clearly a token placement. He continues this later. I am a member of the old ruling class, inevitably compromised with the Bourbon regime. and tied to it by chains of decency, if not affection. I belong to an unfortunate generation, swung between the old world and the new, and I find myself ill at ease in both. But his opposition runs much deeper, from a knowledge of what Sicily is and why it cannot be free part of a free state. Sicily is old, he says, perhaps worn out and exhausted, but clearly opposed to the idea of doing anything at all. There is a self-sufficiency in Sicily, their sensuality, their laziness, their voluptuous torpor. That makes the Sicilians sleep and long for death. A long quote. The Sicilians never want to improve for the simple reason that they think themselves perfect. Their vanity is stronger than their misery. Every invasion by outsiders, whether so by origin or if Sicilian by independence of spirit, upsets their illusions of achieved perfection, risks disturbing their satisfied waiting for nothing. Do you really think, Chiavelli, that you are the first who has hoped to canalize Sicily into the flow of universal history? It isn't feudalism that made Sicily self-satisfied. It was the, quote, sense of superiority, end quote, that sparkles in the eyes of the Sicilians, a pride and a blindness. What do Don Fabrizio's answers add up to? How is his answer, love at Donna Fugata, 2? A few preliminary reflections on this. Tancredi is a man capable of love, as is Don Fabrizio, while Angelica and Chiavelli are not so capable. The old family can love the land, love another human being, feel the insufficiency in themselves that is the first moment in love. Angelica and Chiavelli entirely lack self-knowledge, and hence what they might lack. They are about the world of calculation in Angelica's case, and the world of institution building in Chiavelli's case. What is more, Tancredi and Don Fabrizio risk things. They're willing to put their lives on the line for things they love. Thus both of them see death at the end of their love. They see that eros and thanatos are related in the human heart, in part because the fulfillment of eros is annihilation in thanatos, and in part because there is a lacking in eros that presages a lacking in human life, a lacking of eternal life, so to speak. Don Fabrizio especially can think in these terms, to see himself in the line of ancestors that reach backwards and hence may reach forward. He can still think that it could not be otherwise. The other characters, Tancredi, Angelica, Chiavelli, think about progress and see progress through the lens of destroying the given and building a future. That will be a world without love and a world without Donna Fugata. That seems to be where we are at the end of chapter 4. Don Fabrizio refuses the Senate because it is a modern institution, and he is an honorable and old-fashioned enough guy to doubt that the progress that is promised will happen. This state of things will change when modern administration takes the reins, promises Chiavelli. It will be different but worse, answers Fabrizio. We were the leopards, the lions. Those who'll take our place will be little jackals, hyenas. The new man, the mayor, in the novel, it seems, will be vindicating Fabrizio's judgment.